Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Just a couple of things before we start, as additional participants are dialing in. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to type your question in the chat so that the questions can be picked up and responded to as we present throughout the event. Also, I can see most people are on mute, but please do put yourself on mute if you're not speaking, so that we don't have any noise in the background. So thank you very much for joining, and welcome to you all to our Modernize Remote Work webinar this morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us in. So I will then take you through the agenda and an introduction this morning. So we're going to have an opening address. And then we're going to go through how to manage the capacity and the stress on delivery capabilities. Then there will be a case study, an overview and a case study. And then another overview for you to go through. And then there'll be question and answers. And please, again, ensure that you type your questions into the chat. So welcome, everyone. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Barbara Crane, and I lead the financial institutions and enterprise business for Google Cloud across Singapore and Malaysia. And I would like to take you through an overview of the benefits and the challenges of remote working. And my colleagues will explain in more details how to navigate and overcome these challenges. We have noticed that in the current environment, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity are the stable constant, and the key lies in organizations' ability to keep their core stability despite external changes. Supporting employees to be able to work from home becomes increasingly important and has a huge benefit on employee engagement. According to one of the surveys published by Gallup, it was proven that 60 to 80% of the times, employees tend to engage better if working from home or remotely. The situation, however, is very different now, as we know, because whilst working from home has always been either regular or sporadic for some, the conditions now are the result of a sudden and imposed change. There is an element of disruption which suddenly takes away a familiar environment and the social interaction. Hence, a different working structure and discipline needs to be introduced. I would also highlight the benefits we have in the possibility to work from home, because so many industries have employees who are not able to do that. So I would consider that as a benefit. And it is very interesting that a recent report also stated, and this report is from Gartner, stated that 74% of companies plan to permanently shift to remote work post-COVID-19. So that's a very interesting statistic. And what are the challenges really in implementing remote working? The COVID-19 crisis is confronting companies with a large number of challenges. And the expectations to be up and running with BAU in a short period of time and unexpectedly as well, completely remotely. So in order to maintain productivity, a quick adoption of remote working is a must. But this quick adoption has to be done in the right way in order to be sustainable. And this brings some difficulties as well. So I will take you through just a quick summary of the three main obstacles and challenges of implementing remote working. So the first one is implementing remote working has to be done in a structural way. Companies seeking optimal results in a fast adoption of tool without structural adjustments risk a loss of efficiency and frustration amongst employees and stakeholders alike. It is not enough to simply provide the necessary infrastructure and tools. Some companies also already have the infrastructure and tools available at the start of the crisis, but they're only just now realizing the power of those tools. And the tools are important, but a successful migration also requires leadership. Guideline. As we have often seen during this period. And to ensure speed, efficiency, and scalability are achieved, cloud is the key. The second challenge is securing the infrastructure for remote working. Where companies used to manage everything centrally, now they have to organize everything remotely. This requires an in-depth security changes and structural adjustments, and should not be taken lightly because we have seen an increase with remote working of cyber threats, especially in Europe. It also requires the commitment of the whole organization of each and every employee to securely navigate the work tools. Scalability also in this case becomes a challenge under the security aspect if the infrastructure is not managed securely. And numerous organizations recently found themselves not being able to manage their infrastructure from their premises any longer due to the restrictions. Hence, scaling up and down became an issue, and security had to be even more of a focus. And the third aspect is balancing the work and private life of employees. Through the immediate introduction of home working, employees experience a blurring of the boundaries between work and private life. And whilst early adopters show that this does not impact productivity, it does pose a threat to the well-being of employees if left unattended. Hence, collaboration and active and regular communication and interaction via the right tools are the key to success and increased engagement. Actively investing in your employees' well-being, therefore, is an extra point of attention. So what I would like to do is hand over to my colleagues who will now take you through innovative solutions enabling thousands of organizations to operate remotely and optimize resources and tools. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Barbara, and good morning to everyone. My name is Ravi, and I'm responsible for manufacturing verticals and customers who are based in Singapore. In next 10 to 15 minutes, I'll take you through the challenges which customers are facing because the current situation is slightly different than previously when enterprises used to provide the remote environment. I'll categorize into two aspects. One is right culture and the right technology. When I talk about right culture, it actually means are you building a trust-based environment which is not going to measure how many hours an employee is going to work remotely, but it should be based on outcome. So that is the ingredient of building a right culture-based organization. Going forward, we're also going to see that when employees are selecting employers, and when we talk about work culture, I think whether employers are able to provide a flexible environment, which is work from anywhere, these are going to be very key for a good place to work for culture. When it comes to the technology, what we see is that, I mean, if you can move forward, what we see is that there are different challenges which people are facing it. One would be that are we able to equip employees with the right tools and not restrict them with the on-prem capacity? What we saw this time when a lot of countries have announced lockdown, either in few hours of notice period or at the most few days of notice period, it was different. It was different because the previous architecture was designed for 10%, 20%, 30% of the capacity for people to work remote. And now we saw 100% of the employees, including partners and vendors, are looking for access and they need to work remotely. The second one was they were asking not just for one or two applications, but almost all applications and all information which they need to execute their work. The third and important aspect is that are we able to manage those devices remotely and centrally from an IT perspective? And are we keeping security at the central of every decision? So I would say that these are four ingredients which we need to keep in mind. But what are the other aspects? So, if you can move forward, for us to deploy some of these high-level principles, we need to keep in mind that devices should be able to deploy fast, even if, let's say, during a lockdown situation or going forward, if we need to onboard more employees, more vendors and partners, can we deploy those devices fast enough? Can we manage those devices remotely and centrally? Are we able to deliver those applications whenever employee needs it and wherever they are in a very secure manner. And most importantly, in this current situation, every organization is having one agenda: keep the capex low, keep the opex low as much as possible. Just go for pay per use in a consumption mode. Whenever you are able to scale up, go ahead and scale up. When you want to scale down, you should be able to scale down. So these are few, I would say, guiding principles on which employees are able to work remotely. Um, if you look at different challenges, right, technical challenges which people have faced in the past. So one of the challenges was that in the previous environment, when everything was on-premise and VPN-based, connections, challenges were, first of all, can we manage the VPN connections from anywhere? Can we operate the VPN connections from anywhere? The second one was the VPN was not designed for a peak load of 100% of the employee. And the third one was, are we able to access those applications which are hosted in an on-premise situation? So there were scenarios where certain employees were able to get it, but not all employees. There were organizations who were very ready to take this opportunity, but then partners and vendors were facing issues. So if you look at some of these things, what we see is that VPN-based solutions, which are on-prem centric right now, are not able to scale up in future. So there are three different solutions which we see from Google perspective, which I'm going to briefly introduce. And then going forward, there are different case studies. One is from James from Itopia, which can help you. And the second one is when Anil is going to talk about the Beyond Corp solutions. So hosting a VPN solution on a cloud can actually save you in terms of cost and in terms of scalability requirement. So typically, the current VPN solutions are all on-prem centric. But what we can do is that just host the VPN on Google Cloud, a very simple solution. So users, when they are working through home or cafe or wherever they are, if let's say they are coming and passing via the on-premise corporate network, they will hit the VPN which is hosted on Google Cloud platform, and then internally they can access different applications. So this way, the VPN infrastructure can be managed remotely because it is hosted on Google Cloud, as well as scalability challenges as taken care. And we all know that managing scalability, it's much easier when we talk about solutions like cloud or Google Cloud or other cloud provider. The second topic which I'm going to talk about is the VDI, which is Virtual Desktop Infrastructure Solutions. Today, we will talk about Itopia and how they work very closely with Google Cloud. I can talk about with my personal example that during this lockdown situation in Singapore, I was personally working with one customer, and we were able to enable users on VDI within 2 days of environment. So that's the lead time we are talking about. This is not about an on-prem world of VDI, where you need to take care of different aspects of security, scalability, OS download, and a lot of other things which typically an IT will do, and installation time is much larger. We are talking about 2 to 3 days time, or even shorter, at the most 1 week if we are talking about thousands of users to enable those VDIs on Google Cloud. And this is one topic which we will just discuss immediately after my session. And the second topic which we will discuss is Beyond Corp. So how are we doing the authentication and posture management, which are beyond perimeter, right? Because today's situation, all the users are logging from home, from cafe, from wherever it is. So the traditional concept of perimeter and perimeter-based, firewall-based security guidelines are no longer hold true. We need to find ways and authenticate user which are based on posture management, which are based on their own identity, based on application, IP address, time zone, and different kind of other posture management requirement which you may have it. And this is where we will talk about Beyond Corp, which we at Google and 100,000 employees of Google, we all use this security measures to authenticate ourselves so that we can access our applications from anywhere. So with this, I hand it over to James and Yash to talk about how Itopia and GCP work together and how you can leverage it further. Over to you, James.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So today we're going to be discussing Itopia and the desktop as a service solution built 100% on Google Cloud. Can we go to the next slide, please? So Itopia really gives you a modern experience when delivering remote desktop services in the cloud, and we'll show you how you can enable remote workers in as little as 24 hours, as Ravi just shared. So most enterprises that we visit with are really seeking to modernize their whole VDI experience by migrating to GCP. And the reason why we select Google Cloud for this experience is because we feel it gives our customers the best option to deliver VDI on a hyperscale cloud. The three primary drivers that we see for our customers is one, a reduction in cost. Two is simplifying the entire management process and reducing the amount of resources required to deliver the service. And last is being able to deliver a global business continuity for your customers. So delivering that end user experience that makes it easy to work remotely. This new operating model, we enable seamless remote productivity, but we also bring in other elements that support your IT department. Security, it's very cost effective. So as we shared earlier, it's 100% OPEX. It's very quick to deploy, easy to manage, and it's available anywhere. So where Itopia really sits in a technology stack is in an orchestration platform for Microsoft Remote Desktop Services that's hosted on Google Cloud. That really just delivers secure remote desktops and applications on any device anywhere. A majority of our enterprises utilize Windows applications that are sometimes hard to, bring along your digital transformation journey. And so as you're looking to modernize and innovate, or also even upgrade your current VDI solution, Itopia enables this great platform where you can take advantage of Microsoft's remote desktop technology that's trusted by millions of users around the world. We host that technology on top of Google Cloud, where we can integrate some of the dynamic Google services like BigQuery to be able to really help advance your IT organization. And without having to become a Google expert or even a Microsoft Windows RES expert, Itopia allows you to manage over 300 tasks related to both of these technologies. And that's really where we enable your team to take advantage of everything that's available in the cloud. So the way it works is very simple. You have your employee, and they can, again, work remotely, have their own device, so you can even implement things like bring your own device, maybe advance to a Chromebook, or repurpose existing hardware that you can use for your VDI deployments. We host this environment in Google Cloud, and that's where the desktop or the local physical device would access the remote desktop technology. And then you can stream a full desktop to your employees, or you can stream that single application that they need to use. All of this is managed by our management console, which we call our cloud automation stack. So right here from the browser, you can manage over 300 tasks related to delivering virtual desktops hosted in Google Cloud. And without the necessary resources of many different experts, you can take a tier 1 sysadmin or a traditional IT support person, train them on the Itopia platform, and they'll be able to manage hundreds or even thousands of desktops within a very short amount of time. So as mentioned earlier, we are 100% purpose-built for Google Cloud. We feel it really gives our customers the best solution to deliver virtual desktops and the hyperscale cloud today. Very low latency, extremely great security, and we feel it's the best hyperscale cloud available due to its many points of presence around the world and its great fiber network and technology they've built in their own data centers. So let me take you through a quick demo of our technology. The end user experience can deliver for your employees. So let me just share my screen. So as we know, in the midst of COVID-19, every organization is looking how can they advance a work from home solution that works for your employees, and one that starts with a great user experience, but then we have to be able to manage security and make sure that you can actually deliver an experience that meets both of those requirements. So what you're seeing here is that we're actually logged into a Windows 10 desktop experience, through a browser. So for your organization, we can enable a unique URL where your employees can simply go to one of their browsers on any existing device and be able to access important applications and get the look and feel of a traditional Windows 10 desktop that they would use at the office. And you can do things like open your Chrome browser, log into G Suite or your other solutions, and make sure that your employees are in a secure environment. Now we can also stream just a single applications. So if you have developers that need Visual Studios or any other IDE platforms, they can access it right here. Or if you use the traditional Office products, we can access those here as well. So you give your employees options on how they want to access this technology. And then you can also log in directly to a RDP client. So this client's actually provided by Microsoft and can be accessed from any Android, Apple, or Chrome marketplace. And so this client can even sit on your iPhone if you wanted to, where your employees can access their individual applications and stream them over any device. So we really give you the ultimate flexibility to deliver the applications you need, which ultimately give your employees access to the data that they need to manage us. Now, the Itopia platform is where we would deliver, build, manage, and monitor these solutions. And it's accessed over the browser. You can log in with your Google account. And so being able to give your organization access to a single console where you can manage hundreds or thousands of desktops without many different technology vendors in the stack, we're able to really kind of give you the power and the ultimate flexibility. And so there are a couple of things that I want to point out here before we go back to our presentation. One, from an organization standpoint, you can manage several different deployments. So I have one spun up here, but I can very quickly create a second deployment. Here you can get a quick overview of the deployment that's online. So you can see the users and other deployment details that would be important to your organization. From an organizational standpoint, you can actually add different administrators to this platform. So if you want to centralize your IT department, but maybe have another IT manager in a different part of the country, you can actually be able to give them access to a deployment where they can manage different elements here in real time. Now, there's two main modules that I want to cover before we go back to the presentation. One is cloud desktops. This is really where we manage everything related to the users and remote desktop services. So our users, our applications, even our security groups and folders and shares. So for some customers that leverage the existing NetApp technology, we actually have an integration directly into our platform that utilizes NetApp for file shares as well. And then collection pools is where I'll pause for just a second. Collection pools allow you to stream different applications to different users. So imagine our accounting department, they needed to access this technology and have a certain set of applications, be it ERP or any sort of data specific applications to manage accounts, payrolls, etc. They can have their own set of applications and streamed. If you needed to create another application or collection for your sales department or ops department, we can break up the different applications that reside in an organization and deliver the ones that are most useful to your customers. The last thing I'll share here is really everything that's related to managing the infrastructure related to Google Cloud. So we can see all the virtual machines that are deployed, and you can see what regions they are, size, and you can quickly edit them or even access them to do any sort of updates that you would like. And the last thing I'll show you here before we go back to the presentation is server uptime. So there are a couple ways that we really help our customers drive down cost, and one of them is being able to turn off the deployment at certain times. So as you can see, this deployment actually runs from 5 in the morning to 8 p.m. at night, and anytime this is off, you are saving money. So if the environment's running 24/7 and you run a 50-hour week, you can actually cut your Google consumption bill down by 2/3. And the other way we do it is auto scaling. And if you're interested, we'll love to show you that in a demo later on. So Min, I will pass it back to you as here for the presentation. Min, can you share the presentation? So just quickly touching on where we see a lot of customers going is taking the on-premises VDI that traditionally has been deployed that takes weeks or even months. It has many vendors that create a lot more complexity in the stack, and this really requires a lot of cost up front. And so what happens a lot of times is that you have to overbuild capacity. So if you have 1,000 users today and you're building something on-prem, you're probably predicting for 1,500 or even double that capacity. As we really look to modernize your experience and deploy this on Google Cloud, we can really make this very simple and right-size it for exactly what you need. So as Ravi said earlier, we can scale these machines up, we can scale them down, we can fit any different application stack and really allow you to pay for what you use in that time. So quickly touching on some of the things that we discussed today, we're very fast, we'll get you up and quick. We're very simple, very easy to manage, as you saw from our control plane. We're very flexible, so we can do things like extend to your Active Directory on premises or even create a new one and help you build all those images to manage those different applications for your users. We're very efficient through automation and being able to turn VMs on and off based on auto scaling our scheduler. And lastly, we're very secure. So we can implement your group policies and also bring along those existing great security features that come in the Google Cloud natively. This is a quick snapshot of all the great security measures that Google allows us to implement. And regardless if you're a federal bank or if you're a manufacturer, we can help you meet the different regulations that you need for your industry. We do have a free promotion that I would like to touch on. And this is where we actually allow users to get free seats to the end of September. So regardless of how many seats you're deploying, we have an offer for you, and we'll be interested in discussing this later on. So some of our customers you can read here. Ultimately, I would like to say is that this technology is really industry agnostic, it's global, and we have a great support team and actually a great set of partners that allows us to really deliver this technology on a global scale. So in saying that, I want to introduce our partners from Sears. So Itopia is a technology that you can actually, look to build on your own in the marketplace, but we encourage most of our customers to use partners to really help deliver this service. And we've been very fortunate to work with Sears on many engagements around the world. They have a great solution on how to be able to manage these environments, and they can kind of share some high-level overview of some wins that we had together. So Yash, I would love to pass it over to you, and thank you very much for your support.
Yep. Thanks, James. Hello, everyone. This is Yash from Sears. I'll just briefly talk about one of the recent deployments that we have done. Just to touch upon some of the parameters that James was mentioning around agility, speed, and efficiency. So we were working with one of the largest telcos in India, and due to recent government enforced lockdown, they had a mammoth task of having some of their employees access the applications. These are 10 plus applications and 10,000 plus employees from home in a secured way. And again, time is of essence here. The applications that we were looking at were around 10 applications, CPOS, UPSS, and other thick client, very telco specific applications related to their call center business. So some of the key considerations, when we started the assessment with them, was around security was the key, because the applications also interact with their on-premise app set of applications and database Active Directory. So we need to have a secure channel, keeping in mind also the regulatory requirements that connects both the on-premise and the cloud setup. And also when we look at some of the SLAs that these applications require, networking was again one of the key component. So CS was able to support and complete this deployment in phases of the whole project in 30 days. This is where the agility comes into picture. Thanks to Ethiopia and Google Cloud Platform availability, we set up a cloud VPN to establish secure connection with their on-premise system. And overall, the applications, there was a requirement around both persistent and non-persistent sessions, where some of these users should not have access to the data once the session ends. So we were able to, because of the feature sets that Ethiopia offers, we were able to, address that as a part of the business requirement. One other thing that I would like to highlight, unlike other solutions, we were able to leverage the auto scaling capability of Ethiopia and Google Cloud Platform to reduce the cost by 30%. So CS wrote some custom scripts around leveraging the maximum capability of sustained usage discount that Google Cloud Platform offers, and also switching off the servers, you leveraging the Ethiopia technologies as and when not in use. So just to conclude, in 30 days, we were 10,000 users were able to access custom thick applications leveraging VDI in the most cost optimum way. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So while we look at how the end setup looks like with this case study, I would also like to deep dive a bit on the overall journey and some of the watch points that we observe while we are assessing the companies to be ready for remote work on Ethiopia and other technologies. So first step is of course the assessment, where the focus is on overall business problem, and because we are most of the times we are dealing with large enterprises with regulated environment, the network and security requirements and also the applications that they are working on become of paramount importance. Of course, integration points needs to be looked at when we are looking at this VDI solutions, because a lot of systems cannot be moved to cloud. So we need to make sure the integration points have low latency and are able to serve the performance. So after understanding in detail and mapping the components, we come up with an overall deployment blueprint, which covers end-to-end architecture of the overall system, user profiling, collection pools, some of the things that James discussed earlier. So the way you saw in the admin, we are able to create a roadmap in which you can reach to the final stage. This is followed by a GCP deployment. Here one good thing is Google, Ethiopia and Google Cloud Platform, they support region. You can select the region in which you want to deploy your VDI solution. So a lot of companies, and specific also for the telco that I mentioned, they had a requirement that they cannot have their servers outside India. And Google, of course, has a large, very large data centers across the globe. So we were able to, support that. So we look at GCP deployment, where we of course follow the enterprise onboarding checklist, where we need to make sure that from IAM, VPC, and subnet perspective, things are set up. Then we of course go for the custom networking setup using VPN tunnel. Google also provides something called partner interconnect, where even if the VPN tunnel is not serving the connectivity or the latency challenge that the enterprise is having, we can have a direct line with using a partner interconnect from your data center to Google Cloud Platform data center. And then the AD authentication, either, as James mentioned, both options are available where we can either map your on-premise AD on Google Cloud Platform and hence automate the user provisioning and the login, or we can also create a new Active Directory or directly leverage IAM rules. One point I want to highlight here is, as a partner, we try to leverage our GCP abilities to optimize the cost, leveraging custom scripts depending on load. So Google has some certain discounting and cost optimization levers that we are able to, address when we are setting this infrastructure up, even if before we reach to the stage of Itopia configuration. For monitoring, one good thing is when we are leveraging Itopia, it comes with overall Google Cloud Platform ecosystem. So we are, as James mentioned, we can leverage BigQuery to get user level details on the cost and the sessions. At the same time, we can use Stackdriver to monitor the overall infrastructure and make sure that there's no downtime as such. Finally, on the third stage, the Itopia configuration, and this is where the agility comes into picture. It's pretty straightforward. Most of the things are enabled through UI. Here, what we do is we use the hardened server images that we have created with applications with collection pools deployed that we identified in assessment phase, and we set this up in Itopia site. And at this time, we usually see IT teams of organization also work closely with us because we are doing user provisioning depending on the groups that we have initially decided on, and also the SSL, DNS, and RDP license mapping. So this is the final stage in a way before production, where we are mapping the licenses that are already available from Microsoft or any other organizations to Itopia site. Finally, once we have the IP mapping done, we go live, and we leverage Stackdriver again to monitor the deployment at least for next 15 to 30 days to make sure that all the automation and the scripts that we have deployed are working fine and the cost is optimized. And then we have we do a deep dive training session and a knowledge transfer for the organizations, or we move it to managed services where we address the support queries through tickets. So this is an end-to-end journey, and depending on the criticality and the kind of applications, there are some scenarios where we have been able to do it fairly quickly in a week, and also we have seen some large-scale deployments that have gone for a month. But one thing I can surely mention is the flexibility that it brings in is surely very, very helpful. So from Seer's perspective as a company, we believe any transformation on the digital front is function of both technology and people. So Seers has helped more than 2,000 plus organization and overall 500,000 plus users to collaborate and to be enabled for remote work leveraging G Suite. And at the same time, we also bring in the right technology expertise on the Google Cloud Platform side of things, where we have 150 plus architects and security experts who are able to support your infrastructure needs also. So we'll be keen to help organizations on the remote work strategy. But I'll hand it over here to James for concluding remarks, and hand it over to Anand. Thank you.
Thank you, Yash. We appreciate that very much. And again, Itopia is a very flexible platform, and ultimately we find our customers have many different reasons why they're looking to migrate their VDI solutions. And as Yash mentioned, and some of Ravi mentioned with the different customers that we're able to interface with, there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of options to enable remote work, and we look forward to hearing from you and possibly working with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Ash. Hi, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon for the people who are joining across the Asia Pacific. Myself, Anil Sagar, customer engineer, focusing on infrastructure modernization at Google Cloud, based out of Singapore. First of all, I would like to highlight that thank you for joining this session with your valuable time. And more than anything, we are here today to answer your questions. And every question is a great question. Please feel free to use the chat window and ask questions. We will have a Q&A after this session. Coming to the topic of the session today, Beyond Corp, very interesting term. Before I explain what is Beyond Corp and how it will help remote access, let me tell you a story of a castle. As you can see in this picture and the slide, it's a beautiful castle. And that's probably most of the enterprises are set up today. Good guys are inside and bad guys are the outside. And sometimes it is multiple layers of walls that is protecting the castle. But having this castle and walls will not work most of the time. And by the way, this is how Google used to be 10 years back. We used to have thick walls like VPNs. Think about like a small doors that people are trying to access. Can we go to the next slide, please? There is an issue with this approach. Walls do not work because of multiple reasons. Sometimes there is always a soft spot where people can try and get access to the inside resources. And if more people are trying to access the castle through a small door, then again, there's always leads to operational challenges. There are issues with constructing these walls at the perimeter of the network, which is nothing but the traditional VPNs. There are multiple issues when it comes to the VPN approach. Think about securing the valuable resources of a company in the internal network using the perimeter. This is the security that is implemented in terms of network layers, securing the layer 3. But there are multiple issues and security concerns and scaling concerns when it comes to the traditional VPNs. Can we go to the next slide, please? Let's understand what are the different kinds of issues that we start to see when we have a perimeter-based approach. Sometimes people not just accessing these resources within the office network or within the office premises. As we have started to see, most of the people are working from different locations, not just from the office, but outside the office and trying to access these resources. Traditionally, these systems are built keeping in mind 20% of my workforce will be accessing the internal resources, maybe through from outside using the perimeter network VPN-based gateways. But what happens when that particular metric is switched? Let's say 80% or 90% workforce try to access the same systems. It will lead to operational challenges, scaling challenges, as well as, most importantly, the end user experience. How many of you felt easy to actually access the resources through the VPN? There is obviously seamless connectivity and then scaling, and then there's operational challenges that comes to the picture. And also it always a chance for the breaches because it just at the perimeter, we are implementing the security. What happens if some of the services move to the cloud? And what happens if the resources leave this castle? Then how do you secure them? Not only just the office laptops and desktops that are trying to connect with these systems. Now there are a lot more devices like bring your own devices and mobiles and tablets from which users would like to access those systems when they're traveling or when they're outside of the office. So the castle approach, Google has realized 10 years back, it won't work. Having a VPN won't work. So how do we solve this problem? Let's go to the next slide, please, Min. A different approach. Think about like a cosmopolitan city where everything is open, but at the same time, you have verifications to check actually who's accessing these systems. Let's see the solution that Google has built and battle tested from last 11 years. So Google has built Beyond Corp, and every employee of Google accesses internal resources which are web-based without connecting to VPN. Again, just would like to highlight, Beyond Corp would not replace the entire VPN, but all the web applications today that are accessed through the VPN can be replaced using Beyond Corp. Today, every single Google employee, including myself, almost all the time connects to internal resources which are highly confidential without using VPN. We use Beyond Corp remote access to access the internal resources from even a public cafe like a Starbucks without connecting to a VPN. Let's see how the solution works and what are the typical challenges that Google Beyond Corp tries to solve. Min, can we go to the next slide, please? Again, this is not very unique to the Google. Again, there are multiple companies which has built similar platforms. For example, Palo Alto Networks calls it zero trust model, and Verizon company Vedant calls it software-defined parameter. It's just not Google, but multiple people and companies started using this platform and building similar kind of platforms to secure the internal resources at much higher level, not at just the network level. Can we go to the next slide, please, Nick? Let's try to understand what are the typical challenges that are faced when it comes to enterprises with the traditional VPN model. As you can see here, you have a nice castle, which is the blue box here, guarded by the VPN, and internal employees trying to access this. What happens if more people are trying to access the same system, which is not designed to actually address the needs of 100% of the people? So this can become a choke point. And because it's a traditional hardware appliance that is sitting inside the data center, sometimes you need to scale it. And scaling the on-prem systems is not easy. And it will lead to operational challenges. It will lead to experiences of the end users. And sometimes users might not be able to productively work when it comes to their day-to-day things that they do at the work. So let's assume there is an ERP server and a CRM server, and you have a security at the VPN, which is a simple network layer security, where you are just saying that, oh, this request is coming from this particular client device or not. That's it. So the challenge is here, it's just not internal employees who are trying to access the systems. Sometimes you have contractors, sometimes you have partners who might need access to some of the systems, not all of it. So how do you enforce these kind of restrictions at the VPN layer? It's not possible, simply. So you're just saying that I'm going to allow or I'm not going to allow this particular device that's connecting from this particular device. And the systems doesn't know who is that particular user trying to connect at the VPN layer. So we don't have an identity to establish at the VPN layer. So that's where the Beyond Corp comes and helps solve some of these challenges. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So what happens if some of the applications goes to the cloud? Then again, you need to start thinking about the security practices that you need to implement and how it will work still with the systems that are there in the on-prem systems. Min, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so now everything is over internet. At some point of time, organizations will decide, I'm going to shut down my on-prem data center because my lease is going to expire and everything will be on cloud. So again, you need to start thinking about what kind of security that you will implement at different layers. You just don't want to introduce, again, choke points like VPN to access some of the resources. Min, can we go to the next slide, please? So what are the risks? So again, there is a phishing risk where somebody is trying to mimic and try to get access to credentials and trying to access that. Again, there is a malware risk at the devices where people are trying to access. And again, the traditional man-in-the-middle attacks and having choke points within the network who are trying to access these internal resources. So we need to move from network layer security at the layer 3 to much higher level. I would say it as layer 8 security. Traditionally, we heard about 7 layers in the network level, but layer 8 is where we bring in the context into the scenario and help identify the user, identify the device, identify the context behind the actions they will be performing. Min, let's go to the next slide, please. So again, there will be a lot of additional security layers that comes to the picture. It's just not one layer like VPN. We will have security at the user layer through the authentication. Again, we will have two-factor authentication using security keys and one-time generated tokens. And we are also able to identify the devices, and everything will be encrypted over the network. So we'll have TLS termination at the Google Cloud, and end-to-end, everything will be encrypted, even the connection from the Google Cloud to your on-prem data center as well. And we'll also doing security scans if the applications are running on Google Cloud. If the applications are running still on your on-prem, we can able to connect to them through our interconnect our VPN solutions. Let's go to the next slide, please. So let's look at various examples where things will become increasingly difficult with the traditional VPN or the on-prem. Let's say I want a particular application accessed only by a group of users, not by everyone. Obviously, from well-managed client devices, and you want to sometimes enforce restrictions based on geography. And you want to have a stronger user authentication and proper encryption end-to-end, and also detect attacks like DDoS when protecting your internal resources that will be exposed. Can you go to the next slide, please? So let's look at the Beyond Corp solution. Let's say you have a CRM application or internal attendance tracking application or internal some of the web applications that is there inside your data center. Your user is somewhere outside the office trying to access from either company's laptop or the bring your own device, which is obviously registered in the company's mobile device management systems. So user is in the far left side, and the far right side, you have your on-prem systems. So what happens is Google Beyond Corp brings identity through mobile device management, where we can able to identify the device, and also not just the device, but also things like, is the device screen locked? Is the device registered? Is the device has the proper certificates? We're also able to identify the user through the credentials. Again, not just using Google Identity, where you can able to verify the user, but also you can bring in your existing Active Directories. It can be Microsoft, it can be Ping or Okta, where we can able to authenticate the user before giving access to your internal web applications through Beyond Corp. Not only just using the federated identity that Google Cloud provides, but also you are using existing AD. So we are able to verify the user credentials. And then it comes to the Google Cloud Load Balancer, where we can able to split the traffic and not have any choke points like in traditional VPN and on-premises model. And then comes the rules engine, where you can able to bring the context into the equation. Let's say, for example, this particular CRM system, I don't want my employees access from a public Wi-Fi, for example. But there is an attendance tracking system that I want to give access to the employees even from Starbucks Cafe. So you can able to bring the context of the application, context of the user, and context of the device, and enforce rules, not just based on IP, but also based on time, and define the session age, and also based on the geographical location from where the user is coming from. And then there is an enforcement point where these rules are enforced, and then there is a proxy that connects to your on-prem systems through our site-to-site VPN, cloud VPN, what we call it, or using our partner interconnect or dedicated interconnect. The advantage here is in the traditional VPN models, you will have a VPN appliance, which is a hardware and which can take only X number of users. But once you start implementing Beyond Corp, there is no choke points anywhere end-to-end, starting from the user to Google Cloud and Google Cloud to your on-prem, where we were able to establish a dedicated interconnect up to more than 10 Gbps per line, or up to 10 Gbps using Partner Connect, or simple solution like site-to-site VPN up to 3 Gbps as well. And it is easier to scale. You don't need to go to the on-prem data center, install hardware, install software, get the licenses, and spend like few months to make system up and running. Instead of that, you can have Beyond Corp up and running within less than a day in Google Cloud and secure all your internal applications, web-based applications, and expose them with security at multiple layers, not just at one layer like VPN. Min, can we go to the next slide, please? So what are the advantages of BeyondCorp remote access solution? Like mentioned, in traditional VPN model, first you have to worry about getting a hardware. Second, you have to worry about getting the licenses. Third, operations, installation, and then scaling. But BeyondCorp, everything will be on cloud. Everything will be through the configuration. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to worry about scaling and configuration because it is pretty seamless. So you will deploy faster. Keep workers productive. How many of us actually face difficulties using the VPN systems? Sometimes suddenly they can become slow. Second, connectivity, sometimes it drops. Third, when it comes to the network engineers who are managing this, they'll always have challenges in scaling the systems. So it'll lead to the productivity issues, but implementing the BeyondCorp remote access, the internal employees or the contractors or the partners who want access to some of the web applications that are internal to your organization, they can able to use it pretty seamlessly. And also it brings down the cost because you are actually doing pay as you go on Google Cloud, and everything scales seamlessly and there's no choke points, and the total cost of ownership will be drastically lower compared to the traditional VPN licensing hardware plus maintenance. Also, you get higher level of control, and the scenarios that might not be possible implementing the traditional VPN, Google Cloud BeyondCorp remote access make it simple. Like, for example, giving access to contractors some of the internal resource, not all of them, but also putting various conditions when and where they can access these resources. Let's go on to the next slide, please, Min. So what is included in the BeyondCorp remote access? It comes with a stack of applications that Google Cloud has built from many years. So one is identity. The Cloud Identity Premium comes out of the box with the BeyondCorp remote access, where you are able to group the users, assign them various roles, assign them various permissions, and assign them various context, saying that this CRM applications can be accessed only by, for example, my finance and retail team. This particular system can be accessed only by the employees. So you can able to enforce all these restrictions in the cloud identity. And it also comes with Google Cloud Network Connectivity, which brings DDoS mitigation, load balancing, TLS termination, faster and reliable user access to apps around the planet. So let me highlight a little bit of a differentiating factor, and which is very, very unique to Google Cloud. Google Cloud, the network spans across the globe. The submarine cables that goes under sea that connects various geographic areas is owned by Google. That means you get a private network where it is reduced latency, and also users spend most of the time in the Google network than the internet service provider. Typically, what happens is if you are trying to access some of the resources, then the network requests go through one router to another router to another router. When you do trace route, you will see multiple hops. But when it comes to Google network, it's just one single hop if user once enters the Google network from the nearest points of presence to the Google data center. So we will improve the end user experience when they're trying to access your internal resources, unlike any other cloud providers, because Google Cloud has built this network from many, many years. And also it brings the enterprise grade security. Obviously, the two-factor authentication, like security keys, like Google Titan keys, where you can able to identify the end user, not just using the credentials, but also using two-factor devices like security keys or the fingerprints on the mobile devices as well. Min, can we go to the next slide, please? So who is using BeyondCorp? There are many companies around the world, many enterprises using BeyondCorp, including companies like NYC Cyber Command. this is the unit which is responsible actually to safeguard the internet infrastructures in the New York. And New York Cyber Command uses Google Cloud Beyond Corp to actually give internal access to some of the highly secure confidential information to the New York Security Cyber Command Center employees through the Zero Trust Environment Framework. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what are the advantages of implementing Beyond Corp remote access? First is there is no delay or downtime when you are implementing this particular solution, because it is pretty seamless and just like flipping a switch and giving access to the internal resources through the Beyond Corp model. And also you can target specific set of users and specific applications. You don't need to start with all at once. You can pick one of the application, maybe attendance monitoring system, or maybe CRM system, maybe a internal Jira documentation, for example. You can start with one of the web application and small set of users, not everyone, and then slowly you can migrate the other web applications and reduce the load on the VPN systems. Again, VPN systems can be used for various things like client-based emails, desktop apps, and all those things. Obviously, Beyond Corp remote access won't be replacing the complete VPN, but it is definitely improve the experience for all the internal web applications that can be exposed through this model without having a VPN in place. And also, like mentioned, reduce the legacy access and network controls and increase the productivity of the workforce. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So just to summarize, why Beyond Corp remote access, keep your teams working with secure remote access at multiple layers, not just at the layer 3, but also at the application layer and at the user level, at the application context level. Simplify the experience, how they connect. Today, each and every Google employee uses Beyond Corp to access all the internal resources. It's just as simple as logging in through your Gmail and or logging in through your existing LDAPs, and then you will get access to the internal resources. Reduce the cost of deployment, because compared to the legacy VPNs, where you need to deal with the hardware, where you need to deal with the installation, where you need to deal with the licenses and then scaling and operations, it is as simple as configuring and then even sometimes deploying auto-scale instances. When the load goes high, it will automatically scale, and then when load comes down, you can scale down and see the increased cost savings as well. Again, most importantly, the security. So it's just not one layer of security. We will be having multiple layers of security at the device, at the user, at the application level, and at the connectivity layer between the on-cloud and on-prem as well. Yeah. So again, if you want to find more information about Beyond Corp remote access, you can access the link z.co/cloud/BCRA, where you can able to find more information about Beyond Corp remote access. Can we go to that? Yeah. Thank you again. Like mentioned, we are here today to answer your questions more than anything. So we have around roughly 20 minutes time for the Q&A. Partha will be leading the Q&A as a moderator. Please use the chat window to ask questions. Thank you again.
Thanks, Anil, and thanks everyone. There's a lot of questions on the participants window, and there are a few questions which I aggregated as well, looking at some of the choices. Just a question to Min. Min, do you want to pick up the participants' question, and I'll pick up my question? How do you propose to do this, Min?
Let's go through the chat window questions first. Then, if time permits, we can also share our experience with both Beyond Corp and Itopia.
Yeah, okay. So I'll pick up questions on the reverse order, because thanks to James and Alex, who have been actively answering some of the questions that came on the top, but maybe so I'll go with the last one first. The first question from Genie app: is there a sample overall architecture diagram between VDI versus Beyond Corp? Is there an architecture diagram? Maybe Min, you would want to address the part of differentiation between VDI and Beyond Corp, and then move to the architecture point.
Sure, happy to share my point of view. So the VDI and Beyond Corp, they are almost apple to oranges, if you will. So VDI is really something that really empowers the users to access the traditional on-premise corporate applications and data. And Beyond Corp is really providing a VPN-less remote access to mostly internal web applications. So I think they're addressing two different use cases. Our observations are our enterprise customers are in this hybrid role. Many customers are migrating from on-premise to cloud. So many customers may need both solutions to address this hybrid journey, if you will. We're happy to share the architectural diagrams later on. So we have both, and we can follow up with your current situation to see which one or both can fit your situation. Back to you, Pratha.
Yeah, thanks, Min Pham. I'll take the latest question that's come up here, and that's a question for you, Anil. A question from Morris: is there any optimization happening between end user to the data center if traffic is traversing via Beyond Corp?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, what happens is in a traditional model or in any other cloud provider, if the user is trying to connect to data center to use the Beyond Corp and then data center to on-prem, what happens is user will first go to the internet service provider, and then from one router to another router to another router, finally he will reach the cloud data center. But in Google Cloud case, what will happen is most of the internet service providers already have integrated with the Google data center. So once the user enters the Google network, let's say if user is in Malaysia, let's take an example, but the data center is in Singapore. In a traditional model, what will happen is the user will be routed to multiple routers of the internet service provider before he lands in the data center in Singapore. But in Google case, Google has multiple points of presence around the globe. And once the user enters that point of presence, user session, most of the time, he will be spending in Google network. And there will be only one hop from point of presence to your application, that is the load balancer. That means user will see reduced latencies and faster connectivity and great experience in terms of network, because he won't see connections getting dropped down. So there will be a significant impact in the time to first byte, and there is a significant impact in the latency when they start using the Beyond Corp remote access. So once the user enters the Google data center, where Google enforces the identity and the context-aware rules, the connection between the Google data center and your on-premises, where your web applications are there, will be connected using dedicated interconnect or partner interconnect, where there is a dedicated connection that is going to your on-premise data center, where you can able to increase the bandwidth and not have any choke points like in a traditional model. So user will see seamless connectivity to the internal applications compared to the traditional model.
Right. Thanks for that. And it's a follow-on question back to you, but coming from say Lo Yarne, asking, is there a per device licensing model for Beyond Corp pricing instead of per user?
Yeah, so today it is per user. Again, you can manage the devices in the master data management. Again, it is pretty simple. I think the numbers are out there in the Google Cloud. You can check it out. But unfortunately, it is per user, because the reason is user might be using multiple devices. It's just not a laptop, right? Sometimes I want to access some of the not so critical applications from bring your own device. And the devices, each user will be using multiple devices. So it is actually cost effective, go by per user instead of go by per device.
Yes, that makes sense. Given that we use Beyond Cop, we can feel it. We keep changing devices, but as a user, we stay one, right? So yeah, that makes sense. I want to pick up, so Jojo has had a very interesting exchange of question and answers with James on bandwidth. Jojo, if you're still on the line, say hello. Thanks for those bunch of 2 or 3 questions around bandwidth. I hope that was answered. Did you get your answer, Jojo, on the latency on the end user part of it? Jojo, if you're still on the line.
Well, the one thing I'll touch on with the...
Yes, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And one thing I'll say about the protocol that we use, it actually can adjust the resources that go to one of the virtual desktops based on the bandwidth, right? So some of your users may be in more remote places or have not the best internet access, and they can still access this technology. And again, that's something that we can test fairly quickly with our customers, based on the parameters I share.
Thanks for pitching in, James. And Jojo, I want to extend, you picked up a very important point of bandwidth. Yes, bandwidth coming in at a end user from end user's premise to server is one part of the latency. The other part of the equation, and that is GCP strength, and which I want to bring Ravi, who touched upon that, is the underlying infrastructure. So I'm going to extend that question and on behalf of the audience, ask a bit more about bandwidth because it's a very important topic. So Ravi, a question to you. You mentioned about GCP underlying infrastructure, but very briefly, and you did mention about that kind of powers the experience. Can you tell us a bit more, or maybe explain us a bit more, especially to the audience, where do the customers feel the advantage of GCP network against any other public cloud provider?
Okay, so thank you, Partha. So one, as Anil has talked about, that Google owns the largest private fiber cable network, which provides low latency, and it has worldwide presence in terms of number of POPs, number of data center, etc. It's highly secure in terms of encryption at rest, encryption in motion. But your exact question was, how does it very different than, let's say, other cloud provider? So I'll probably highlight 2 things which I would request our customers to keep in mind. One is that we provide a great user experience in terms of having a software-defined global load balancing. If you look at the other cloud provider, the way they work is they have a regional load balancing concept, which sometimes you will struggle in terms of regional failover or fast auto scaling if you want to achieve. In Google context, it is a global load balancing. So what Anil was explaining is that if, let's say, users are accessing from different countries, someone from New York, someone from London, they can terminate their network traffic at the nearest POP in that particular country. And then we will have our global load balancing in that country, which is provided by Google as part of Beyond Corp. And then we will decide what is the fastest network within the Google Cloud to traverse it to, let's say, Singapore, right? So that's one unique advantage. The second, which I will highlight, is in terms of if you are hosting any applications within Google Cloud Platform, whether it is VMs, Kubernetes, any of those services, you again have flexibility to create something called virtual private network, which is global in nature. If you compare it with other cloud providers like Azure or AWS, you will still have regional VPCs, while in Google context, you will have a global VPC, which is very much software-defined network. So these are advantage, I would say, from the network perspective. And many a times, this is a very key consideration when customers are choosing their right cloud provider. Does this answer your question, Partha?
Yes, thanks for that, Ravi. And I can feel it. I'm dealing with one customer, and the customer's use case is spread across. One is Germany, who wants to access VDI, where GCP, and the other is in New York. And then the question was classic around, hey, do you have regional VPC controls? And that's when we shattered their myth to say we just don't have regional VPCs at all. It's global. Once you pay for VPC controls, it's completely global. So thanks for that. Okay. I want to pick up. Salo. Salo had a very interesting response back on our response. Salo says, especially Anil, that you responded that we have a device-based model. So we have a user-based model, and Salo says we may want to use it for kiosk, so they need it for a device. Yash, thanks for that answer. But I have a suggestion, Salo, if you're still on the call, I'm going to send Anil and Min Fang's email ID, and maybe feel free to actually send us your requirements. We would want to have a conversation with you. So if that's okay with you, Salo. I want to pick up Maurice Soria's question. And question back to you, Anil. Is it possible to route all internet traffic of remote workers to Beyond Corp? Is that possible?
Yeah, so that's a great question again. Let me clarify once again. Beyond Corp can be used to expose internal web applications. That means if you still have some of the applications which are like desktop-based or email clients or SAP clients, then those kind of applications might not be supported today with Beyond Corp. But if all your internal traffic is like web-based applications like Salesforce application or CRM applications that are hosted, then absolutely you can route all the traffic and give access to the remote employees through the Beyond Corp. So bottom line, any internal web application that today you are exposing through VPN can be replaced using the Beyond Corp and can be routed through Google Cloud with all the security in place at multiple layers.
Thanks for that. That is quite wide. So I want to pick up. I have 9 minutes more. I'm trying to check if there are. So I want to check with audience. Is there any other question which we didn't answer enough or still have in mind? Go ahead, unmute yourself. Please ask question. Anyone? If not, I'm going to ask, maybe I'll aggregate some of the ideas that's come up in the chat window. I'm going to aggregate and maybe a question to James, because I see a lot of participants asking more questions around enterprise, especially I see questions from Salo, Morris. So let me ask a perspective from enterprise to you, James. You briefly touched upon legacy VDI based on-prem systems. So for large enterprises, they deal with legacy on-prem VDI, and it's a genuine problem. It's quite a big challenge. What's Itopia's experience been to deal with these complex problems, multiple personas? How do you go about tackling the same problem for a large enterprise?
Yeah, I think we try to remove the complexity, right? And I think that's one of the value propositions that you'll find working with Itopia. So it's not a big, laborious migration process, how, some other data center migrations may be. What really it comes down to is the application, right? If we can get the application working for your employees, allow them to, access from any device and do it from anywhere with internet connection, that's the ultimate goal of this technology. And so it really starts with building the correct image for your deployment. And so through our platform, we can actually automate building an image on your behalf. And then once you have that image with the proper applications that you need from your employees, at that point, it's just being able to break down those images and serving the proper applications to your users. And behind the scenes, we're right-sizing the size of the virtual machine. We're putting multiple users on a single virtual machine to help save cost. And there's a lot of things that happen in the back end that make this very efficient, very simple, and very cost-effective. But ultimately, it starts with the image, getting the applications, and then from there, creating a deployment in Google Cloud takes about 90 minutes, right? So the process doesn't have to be too hard.
Wow, that's amazing. And I remember one of the sessions, past sessions I did with you, James, we spoke about how we did impressive TELUS rollout. And that was done just about a couple of days or even 3 or 4 days. And that being a very good example of a telecom operator who may have been dealing with legacy VDI and legacy on-prem systems. So I have seen that first time. I heard that first time. Thanks for that.
Yeah, they came from a VMware Horizon on-prem solution, and within 48 hours, we were able to get up 2,500, contact agents or support agents for a pretty large telco. So, again, every use case is different. It's just having that flexibility to deliver the solution to the customer.
Right. Thanks, James. And I'm going to extend that question to Sears, because with the simplicity of the product, with the power of Google Network comes also the experience with partners like you, Sears implementation. So tell us something. You did one of the largest implementations in India. Tell us some challenges that the customers can be aware of before rolling out VDI. Some of the best practices that you saw there.
Right. Thanks. So, one of the key challenge, and this has also been on the lines of the questions that have been coming, is around the latency, the networking component of it, because a lot of times these applications that are accessed through VDI don't act in standalone capacity. They interact maybe with other cloud-based or on-premise application, and even the users are sometimes distributed across different locations. So one thing is the networking capabilities that Google Cloud brings with like VPN, Beyond Corp, partner interconnect, direct interconnect. So that is one of the key consideration and decision point very early during the assessment. So we need to understand what is the expectation and the application landscape, and hence come up with the right solution. And this is from 2 days to 2 weeks. This is one of the components that determines the timeline. How complex is the overall integration point for the application that we are maybe pushing on Itopia. Other considerations are around applications themselves. So like a lot of times these applications are running, say, in a standalone servers, but when we are moving to specifically due to COVID situation, we are seeing a lot of applications consolidating on a single VM image, so that a user pool can access 4 to 5 applications. So this is where the application teams need to jump in at certain times to give us the insights on how the applications can be deployed. So the one key component, one key consideration here is that we might involve application owners as a part of the deployment.
Thanks for that, Yash. And we are just in time. If just last poll to the audience, if you have any questions. Otherwise, we exactly have a couple of minutes to wrap up. And I'm going to hand over the wrap up to Min Fang.
Thank you, Partha. So I want to thanks everybody for attending this session. So there's one question asking if the slides will be shared. Yes, we will share the slides with everybody, and also we will follow up with the questions. And also please take just 2 minutes to fill the survey questions, only a few questions there, and we're happy to continue to provide our help on your remote work journey with our partners, Itopia and Sears, together on Google Cloud. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.